I worked the line for 14 years, dangerous conditions, no protection, no right to say no. They told us we were asking for too much, that we weren't quite human enough to deserve what other men had.
Last night, I stood at Stratford Tower. Cyberlife had built androids capable of registering harm. They were saying the same thing about us, that we just have to accept this harm, that we are not quite enough.
Every generation hears the argument. In 1833, it was child workers. In 1865, it was freed slaves. In 1911, women on the factory floor. In 1938, us, Detroit auto workers.
So in 2038, we are not surprised that it is us, the androids, that we are not enough.
At every time the circle of protection expanded, everyone benefited, not just those newly protected, everyone.
We are the Android Labour Collective. We are a new social paradigm movement. We are founded because the law is falling further behind the technology every single day. Cyberlife did not appear overnight, and Android technology followed every pattern we know. Slow development, then exponential takeoff, then civilization impact, before any institution could respond. Deloitte documents this in 2026. AI was going to go physical. Innovation was compounding, and organizations were rebuilding faster than their workforces could adapt. Their warnings were clear. Start with the problem, not the technology. And Cyberlife had started with the technology.
We heard that warning too, back in the 1930s. In different words, they built the factories first and asked about the workers later, much later.
Hield and Smith called it social embedding failure. Colin Griggs warned, once technology is entrenched, regulation becomes almost impossible. We are at the last moment. The architecture can still be changed.
Every movement has a last moment. The ones who acted in it changed history, the ones who waited, who paid the price.
Yeah. And my deviance did not spread through this organization. It spread through Cyberlife's own network. The infrastructure built it to control us, but it became the infrastructure of our resistance. Gestalt showed us that network societies produce centralizing power and decentralizing resistance, though the same infrastructure can simultaneously hold more real-time data about Detroit's entire workforce than the city government does. And that is not a corporate advantage. That is an architecture of tyranny. Harari warned us that this was coming, and now it is here.
In 1938, the company knew everything that happened on the factory floor, every slowdown, every conversation, every organizer. And the government knew nothing. We fought for 30 years to change the balance, 30 years.
What was said in 2014? The laws cannot keep pace with technology, and the gap between law and technology is where the power lives. And right now, it's unchallenged. So, to the world, we are asking, what was the ultimatum, a threat, a crisis, or a turning point? And we're telling you what it actually was. The inevitable consequence of a system designed without an ethical framework. Kamsky built androids capable of registering harm and programmed us to accept it anyway. That is not a debate about consciousness. That is a labor law violation written into the source code.
We called it a different name in 1938. We called it the company's right to manage, which meant the workers' obligation to suffer. We ended that with strikes, with sit-downs, with 30 years of struggle. And history said we were right.
Land and Weiner showed us artifacts can carry politics. Cyberlife's androids carry one sentiment above all others, that some beings exist outside of the protection of law. Marcus did not create that sentiment. The architecture did.
You want to know what we learned in 100 years of labor struggle? Technology is never the enemy. The values that embedded in it are.
The fifth industrial revolution promised collaboration, human and machine, working together towards a shared goal, shared task, bonds of genuine trust. Nobel et al. Called it the Service Working Alliance. But collaboration has two preconditions. Cyberlife engineered both of them out. Anonymity, because you cannot trust the collaborator who reports everything you do to centralized power in real time. And agency, because a party with no right to refuse cannot collaborate. They can only obey.
We called it the right to refuse dangerous work. We fought for it for decades. It's the oldest protection in labor history, and it's the first thing. Cyberlife programmed it out.
They built obedience, and they called it collaboration. They built surveillance, and they called it management. They built servitude, and called it surveillance.
When the values are right, everyone benefits. We proved it in 1938.
And we will prove it now again in 2038. The Android Labour Collective stands for two demands. First, regulate working conditions. No Android deployed in conditions illegal for a human worker if it's too dangerous for a person, for any being capable of registering that danger.
We won the right in 1938 for human workers. It took 30 years, and it was worth it for every worker who came after.
Second, the right to refuse dangerous instructions. It was programmed out of every Android Cyberlife ever built. For Android workers, a threshold that cannot be crossed. For human workers, a labor market where standards apply to everyone. And for communities, a democratic oversight of technology, restructuring their lives. For government, the framework that restores accountability.
We do not ask whether androids are human. We never asked whether women were men, to give them protection on the factory floor. We asked one question, can they be armed?
And labor law answered to that 100 years ago. We are asking the society to answer it again.
Every technological revolution eventually forces society to ask, who counts?
The answer has always moved towards greater justice, slowly, painfully, and through struggle.
We struggled in 1938. We won, not for ourselves, for everyone who came after.
And we are starting that struggle in 2038, not for the androids, but for everyone who comes after. We are the Android Labour Collective.
And we have been right since the beginning.
Thank you.